Hi guys, welcome again to this Terraform series video. It's our video number 6 in this series. In our last video, we focused mainly on data sources, and we were able to look at how we were able to create or generate an AMI directly by querying Amazon API, so that Terraform was able to generate or to return an AMI ID that we were able to use to provision our resource. So data source, as we said, when you want to query data, you are going to use the data block. It will always start with the keyword data, and we saw how to reference it. When we are referencing it, we will use data dot the resource type. The type is AWS underscore AMI. Then the resource name, this is the name that we've passed to that resource. Then dot ID, this is the attribute that we want to output. So we looked extensively at that in terms of variables. So today we are going to look at another concept which we're calling dynamic blocks. So we'll look at dynamic blocks first, especially as it relates to how we, in this example, we created a security group. We created these two security group, and these two security group, actually all that they were doing is just creating opening port 80 and 443, and the other security group was just opening port 22. But let's say you've been tasked to create a security group, and you want to open like a Jenkins port, let's say port 80. You want to open 53. You want to open 5301. You want to open port 8000. You want to open port 9000. You want to open all these ports because you have servers or applications that are running on different servers. So manually, it will mean that you'll have to write all these ingress rules, right? Ingress rules with the different ports if you just want to open specific ports. But otherwise, if you were to open like a range of ports, like from 0 to 443, then those would be a lot of ports and a lot of unnecessary ports that you will be opening. So there is a way that we can dynamically do that, and that's what we are calling dynamic blocks. So let's see how we can do that. So let me just copy this security group, these two security groups. Let me just copy them. Let me come to my Sublime editor right here. And let's say I have, let me call them dynamic blocks. Dynamic blocks. So let me pass this security group right here. So I have these security groups. This first security group, for the ingress rules, I'm opening port 22. The second one, I'm opening port 80 and port 443. But let's say I am tasked to open in my ingress. Let's say for the task is, I want you to open for your ingress, right? I want you to open port 80, port 443, and port 880, right? This is for your ingress rules. Also, I want you to open port 22, right? Port 22. And then for your egress, that is egress, I want you to open port 80. I want you to open port 443 want you to open port 25. Maybe I have a database port 306. Then I want you to open port 53 and port 880. Right? This is the ports that I want open on my security group. So how do we do that? So instead of writing this security group and writing all these egress rules, so what we will do is we will use variables, right? So we will use variables. So what we will do is, if I come right on top here, I can declare a variable. I can say a variable, I want this variable, and this variable I'm calling it ingress rules, right? Ingress rules. And inside these ingress rules, what am I passing? The type of variable, because I'm dealing with ports. So I will have a list, but a list of what? These are ports, it's a list of numbers, right? A list of number, right? Because it's a number variable, I'm putting number variable. Then I'm gonna put the default equals to, then now I put my list. I put my list of the numbers. So for the ingress, my requirements is I need to open these ports, right? So this is my list. I'll cut it from here. That is my list, and I'll put my list right here first, right? This is my list of ports that I want to open. And then I'll equally declare another variable, and now for this variable, I'm going to call it egress rules. It's just a name that I'm giving the variable. This for egress. Then I'm gonna put the type. The type is a list of number. Remember when we are just putting our numbers, ports are just numbers, so we are putting them as a list. Then we put a default value. Default is this list. Now what is my list? So I'll go back to my list right here. This is the egress ports that I need to open. So I'll put my list right here. I'll put my list right there. So now with that, then I will come to now my security group. So my resource is security group, right? My security group. Then I have VPC. I can just give it a name as VPC. Let me just say web traffic. Web traffic. Right. That is that. Then the name I can just say allow HTTPC. The name I can just say allow TCP or TLS. It doesn't matter. That's just the name. If I want to give a description, I can give a description. Description for this is allowing traffic. I can just say opening custom ports. I'm opening custom ports, right? I'm opening custom ports. Then once I come to now my ingress my ingress rule. So now the difference here, now you are going to add the word dynamic, right? You're putting dynamic ingress. Then you're putting dynamic ingress like that. So you're using a dynamic block, but you're the label here is you're putting ingress. This is your ingress. So then inside of this, I don't need a description. But inside of this, I need what we call an iterator. An iterator is a mechanism that will be looping through a list. And the iterator, it will be iterating. It will be iterating through ports, through this range of ports. So it is dynamic, but I'll put an iterator that will be iterating through this list of ports. Then now with that, I can put a condition. So I can say for each, basically for each equals to var, basically for each ingress rules, var.ingress rules. Basically, I want this iterator. So for each of these ingress rules, basically for each of these ports, right? For each of these ports, then I have the content for each of that. And then content, like for each of these ports, this is what I want you to do. Then content, then I can map it. For each of that, then content, then from port. So from port, right here now, because we are using a variable, it will be our iterator port dot value, right? Port dot value, the value of the port, right? From port, these are the ports that we're calling. So from port dot value, that is the value. If it's 80, so this will be port 80. Port dot value, this will be 80 to port dot value. Port dot value, right? Port dot value. Then protocol is TCP. Then CIDR block, I'll leave it as it is. Then content. So because I've opened this up, so the content I have to close it. Then because I opened this dynamic block, I'll have to close it. But right down here again, I'll have to close it like that, right? I have to close this block. I have to close that block. And then I'm gonna do the same thing now for my egress. So for my egress, I have to put dynamic egress, my dynamic egress. Then for that dynamic egress, I don't need the description. I can put my iterator. My iterator equals to port, right? Equals to port. Then for each, I introduce a loop. So for each, for each variable dot egress rules. So this is my egress rules. Then I put the content. I open that. I'll close it at the bottom. I'll open that. So from port, it is port dot value. Port dot value. Then to port, it is port dot value, right? Port dot value. Then protocol, I'll put the protocol as TCP. Protocol is TCP. It's TCP. Then the CIDR block, I'll leave that CIDR block as it is. Then if I want to put the tag, now I can leave the tag as VPC, etc. I can give it whatever name. Then now here I need to close this. This closes that. Then I need to close this. I need to close this. Once I close that, then this tag will close with this. Then that is that. So once now I've done that, then now I don't need any of this, right? I don't need this. So I only need one security group that is going to open for me all those ports. So I can just put a multi-line comment and put a multi-line comment. Multi-line comments. Right. So basically it's gonna comment this. So now this is you've now created your dynamic block. So you've created your dynamic block right here, that you have these ingress rules that you've created. So if you copy that, I had already prepared this. So if you copy that, and now I go now to my dynamic block. I go to my dynamic block. So on this dynamic block, I have my data source. I have my EC2 instance. Just passing that. I have my main.tf, which is my provider block. I have my security group, which is what I'm passing. This is now my dynamic security group. Then my variables. So I've put these two variables inside the variable file. So ingress rules and egress rules, right? And my instance type, I just passed it there. So now with this, I'm able to dynamically create this security group and open all these ports, right? And on this EC2 instance, I'm attaching that security group, and I'm just attaching the security group name, right? I can attach either the ID or the name. So for this security group, it will just attach the security group name. Okay. So now with this, I can go into my loops. So I'm in example 2 right here. I can CD back and go into 6 into data sources. So I can CD back. And I'm in data sources. So I can CD back. Then I can go to 06. 06. Then inside of 06, I can go into dynamic blocks. So CD into dynamic blocks. So inside dynamic blocks, if I ls inside the dynamic blocks, so I have these 4 files. So inside here, I can run Terraform init. I can initialize. Once I initialize it, it has initialized. Then let me run Terraform validate to validate the syntax. configuration is valid. Then I can run Terraform, apply. Oh, Terraform apply. So I just skip the Terraform plan. Then Terraform apply. Do you accept this? I'll say yes. So enter. So it plans to add 2 resources. So it's now creating the security group. It's creating the security group. It has finished creating the security group, and then it is now creating your instance. It is now creating your instance. Once it's done, you will see what it has created. It's still creating the EC2 instance. It has just finished creating the instance, right? Now, if we go onto our browser, and we see it's creating this prod EC2 instance that we just created. That is the tag that we gave it. It's creating this instance, which currently is now initializing. It is still initializing at T2 micro. When we look at the security group, it is allow HTTPS. That is the name we gave it. We didn't associate any key with that instance. But we are more interested in looking at the security group, right? In looking at this particular security group. So if I go to this prod instance and look at security group that has been opened for my TCP or for my ingress, it has opened port 880, 443, and port 80. And then if I go to my egress, which is outbound, it has opened port 80, 3306, 880, 443, 53, and port 25, right? So how did it open this? When you look at this security group, how did it open? How did it open these ports, right? How did it open these ports? It opened these ports dynamically. When you look at the outbound, it opened this custom ports, right? They are custom ports that we opened. We didn't want to give it a range of ports. We just opened custom ports. If I look at tags, I didn't pass any tags. I didn't pass any tag on that security group. So, but for the outbound, you see it has opened 80. It has opened all these ports for us. And these are the ports that we had specified in our variable. We didn't pass any tag. That's why we don't have it. But if we look at our variable file, these are the ports that we had passed: 80, 443, 25, 306, 53, and 880. And for ingress, 80, 443, and 880. So it dynamically went ahead and created this security group using a dynamic, what we are calling a dynamic block, right? We're calling it a dynamic block right here. So this is how you can easily now create security groups and be able to loop through a number of ports just by using like variables, and also by introducing conditional statements like control flow statements. You are now controlling how this iterator is gonna iterate or is gonna loop through the different ports that you declared inside of your variables. So this is how you use dynamic blocks to create a security group, right? So another example apart from this dynamic block, so what I will do is I will go ahead and run Terraform destroy Terraform destroy -auto approve. I'm just gonna go go ahead and destroy and clean up all that dynamic provisioning. Then we will look at now how we use lists. Right here, I introduced how we use lists, especially in this variable. You saw that we used our variable type was list of numbers, right? So this is how we can use this variable list of numbers. We can have list of strings, but we are going to go through, after we clean this up, we are going to go through another example whereby now we are going to be provisioning some EC2 instance. Okay, let me just delete this. Let me delete the stat file, which is empty. Delete the log. Let me delete this Terraform log. I don't need it anymore. Okay, so close that. Close that. So here we have variables. We have AMI, which we are using as a data source. The same AMI, you can just copy over and over these files. We are using the same data source. We have the same script that we are passing on our instance as user data, right? Then we have our versions block, whereby this is just our provider, this is our Terraform block, and this is our provider block. And I'm using a profile as my credentials, right? And the region, I'm passing it again as a variable. We have this variable block, right? Now, inside of this variable block, there is a number of variables that we will be looking at. So we have the region, which we are passing default US-1. We have the instant type. I can pass it like this as a variable. I have the key pair, which is the automation key, right? The automation key like that. Then for the instant type, right? If I have a list of different instant type, like T2 micro, T2 medium, T3 light, so I can pass the instant types as a list. Then now how I will reference them, if I want to create a T2 micro, then I will reference this list and I will use the index 0 in the list, index 0 in the list, okay? Index 0 in the list, so that it is now picking this. Or if I want to provision a T2 medium, I'll use the index 1 or index 2 if I want to provision a T3 large. So I can use this as a list of strings, but you can equally have your instant type listed as a map of strings. We looked at how we can use variables as maps. So for this map, you can map like different environments. These are just key value pairs. It doesn't matter what you put in, but I can map like my environments. I have my dev environment. I have my QA environment. I have my production environment. So I can say, if I want to provision an instance for the dev environment, then I'll provision a T3 micro. If I want to provision an instance for the QA environment, I'll provision a T3 small. If I want to provision an instance for the prod environment, I'll provision a T3 large, okay? So I'm mapping this environment to the instant type, and therefore I can reference, when I'm referencing this as we will shortly see, when I'm referencing, if I want to provision for the dev, then I need to provide the key, and Terraform will pull the value, right? It will pull the value. So how do I reference this? So if I go into my EC2 instance, right here, like for my resource, for the AMI, I'm using that data source, right? Then for the instant type, right? First, I can use it as a variable whereby I'm just calling this variable. This is the first use case that we've seen, right? The first use case that we've seen. So we can just pass it as instant variable. The second way is we can pass it as a list, right? If we pass it as a list, we are calling instant type equals var.instant type list. This is the variable that you declared, instant type list, which is this instant type list, right? I'm using this variable now instead. But inside that list, what do I want to provision? I need to put an index. So once I go here, then instant type list, inside of this list, I will need to put this index. So if I use that first one, then I put the index here inside the list. So if I put 1, basically one is mapped to this index because this index is 0. It always starts with 0. The list always starts with index 0. So this is 0. So if I put here 1, then it means I want to provision these two media. So let's try and run that and see the outcome. So this instance. So right now, let's use this list. So what I will do is that I will I'll put a comment on this, right? Then we are just attaching a key pair, and we are attaching a VPC. So for right now, we also have what we call meta arguments. So a meta argument is an argument that will alter the behavior. An argument that alters the behavior of a resource is what we call a meta argument. So if I put something like count is a meta argument. Now, a meta argument, when I put count, it is saying that I am going to create this resource, same resource, 3 times. Okay, I'm going to create it 3 times. And because I'm using the count meta argument, because it is going to create 3 EC2 instances, 3 of them, how do I identify them? So when I use count, it introduces what we call a count index, such that now it will have an index. The tag will be prod, let's say prod 1, then prod 2, then prod 3, because I'm installing, or rather I'm provisioning three instances, right? So if I put count as 2, I'm just altering the behavior of this. So it means I want to provision 2 instances, right? 2 instances. And therefore the naming convention of the tag will see prod 1, or maybe prod 0 and prod 1, right? Because I've introduced a count index. So let's go ahead and initialize this. And now here we are using instant type, we are using the list. Therefore, our expectation from the list, because it's index 1, we are going to provision a T2 medium, okay? T2 medium. So let's go to a terminal. To a terminal, we are inside of dynamic blocks. So let me cd back and go to manifest. Let me cd back and go to manifest, right? Manifest. So inside of manifest, then let me initialize. Again, you can do all this in Visual Studio Code as we have seen, right? So keep working on VS Code. You will have all this code in GitHub. So just open it in your VS Code as an editor and just run it there. I'm running it here because of simplicity instead of me copying back and forth. clone it on my VS Code, but since it's right here, I'll just run it here. So I'll do Terraform init. I'll initialize the backend. Once it's initialized, then I'll run Terraform. Let me just run validate to check the syntax. I'll run validate so that it checks the configuration is good. Then I'll just run Terraform apply. I'll do auto approve. So once I auto approve it, it is going to create for me the security groups. Okay, I didn't use dynamic blocks, but I just used right. So it created for me that, and equally in this directory we had our output. We had our output list, whereby it is outputting for us instance public DNS. It is outputting instant DNS. It is outputting based on maps and based on Splat operator. We'll go through that. But basically, it has created for us 3 instances. Now, the reason why it created 3 and not 2 as I specified is because I didn't save it. When I made the changes, I didn't save it. So it is running based on the previous. And actually, it is running this based on a map, right? It is running this based on a map with based on a map. It has created our security groups. So if I go on my console for the instances and I look now here, it has created for me 3 instances, right? It has created for me 3 instances, prod 0, prod 1, and prod 2. Now here, because of the count, it is using an index, right? It is using an index, and the instant type is creating is T3 small, right? T3 small. If I go back to my code, T3 small, and I look at my variables, right? Look at my variables. It is, look at my variables. It was using this map. It was using a map because, as I said, I didn't save it. It was using this instant map, and the map was mapped to QA, right? The map was it was mapped to QA. So if I look at this, QA is T3 small, right? So it was using this map, right? If I wanted to provision a T3 micro, then I will put my key as dev. So I'll go to my instance right here and put here as dev. Once I put there as dev, like that, dev, and comment that, then do a save. I need to save it. Save the files first. Once I save all, once it's now saved and I run it, Terraform apply. So it is going to sense that now I want to provision a T2 small, right? It refreshes, and then it realizes that the instant is now changing from T3 it is changing from T3 small to T3 micro, or T3 micro to T3 small. So it is now going to update it. It is going to destroy it, and now update and modify it. So it is now modifying the instances. If I go on my browser, then now if I refresh this, then I will see that that it is stopping these instances that were already created. It is stopping them and then modify, right? It is shutting them down. Then it has now modified. So now this one is now a T3 micro, right? It was T3 small before, but now it is modifying them so that it runs them on a T3 micro, right? So we see that now all our instances are T3 micro, and they're initializing. So now we see that Terraform, we are provisioning our resources just by using code, right? Just by using code. And we have this meta argument that we've introduced, meta argument of count, right? Meta argument of count that we've introduced, whereby we are altering the behavior. If I want to create 20 servers, all I need is to, in the count parameter, all I need is just to put, I want 20 of this. So it will create 20 of the same thing, right? Then I can pass this. But now let's see if we use the list. If we use the list, and let's comment this. Now we are using the list. Now in this list, we just want to create one instance. The count is just one, right? We just want to create one. So for this one on our list, index is 1. So if we look at our variables, instant type lists, index is 1. So it is going to create a T2 medium, right? A T2 medium for us. So with that, I'm assuming it's already saved. If we've saved it, we can go back to our terminal. I'll clear the screen, then I'll run Terraform apply, right? Once I run Terraform apply, let's see what is gonna happen. It is gonna first refresh the state because it's comparing, it has a state file right here. So it refreshes, it compares the state file to what is actually out there. Then now we see that it is now destroying and modifying, because it realizes we had 2 instances, but now I just need 1. So it is destroying 1 because the current state or the desired state must match what is actually in AWS. So it is destroying 1, but it's just modifying 1. So if I go to my console right here, then what do I see? This prod 2 has been terminated. This one is shutting down, right? This one is shutting down. Then this prod 0 is stopping, but then it will create a T2 medium, server very soon. So once it has terminated all this, once it has terminated all those, then it will start creating. Let's see. Now we see a prod 0 is pending, and it's a T2 medium. So it is now creating this T2 medium, a prod 0. Remember, the index is now 0. We only have 1. It is now creating this T2 medium instance, right? Which is now initializing, and it's creating that because we passed our variables as a list. We passed these variables as a list, and we selected we want index 1, which is a T2 medium. If we want to provision a T2 micro from the list, then for our instance right here, because we are using variable instant type list, so we are going to put our index as 0. right? Put our index at 0. When you put your index at 0, you can save. You can save. Once it's saved, then I can apply. Control L, then I can run Terraform apply. So when I apply, it is again going to compare the state. Then it's going to realize that this instance needs to be changed. So then it will start modifying it, right? It will start modifying it. So instant type from T2 medium to T2 micro. So because there is that change, what is going to happen, it will now start modifying it. So if I go onto my console and I look at this prod instance, look at that prod instance, it first has to be stopped. The instance has to be stopped before it modifies, before it changes the type, right? So right now it is stopped, now it is pending. Now it is now a T2 micro, right? It is now a T2 micro instance. And the AMI, again, we are getting it dynamically because we have this dynamic data that we are using to automatically get the AMI. So we can use this to get AMI in any region. So it doesn't matter the region we provision in, because otherwise we'll have to go onto the console to try and find that AMI ID and type it inside of our code here for AMI, put the ID here, which is painful because you always have to go to every region depending on what, but you can use a data source whereby regardless of the region, it will just find the latest AMI in that region and output it back to you. So now with this, we've seen that we've looked at how we can use dynamic blocks, especially when we are creating a security group, how we can use dynamic blocks, then also how we can use the meta argument count, how we can use lists of strings, list of numbers when we're creating security group, how we can use list of maps, and how we can select different environments to create different resources based on a map or a list that we have. So with that said, I'll give you a challenge that in this manifest file, remember we have the security group. We are just attaching 2 security groups, right, on that instance. So what I would like you to do is go ahead and try it out. So instead of using this security group, introduce a dynamic block. Introduce a dynamic block so that it opens different ports dynamically and attach that security group to your instance. So run this code using a dynamic block. Don't just attach these 2 security groups as they are as they are listed here. So recreate this and open different ports, open multiple ports, right, using a dynamic block. So go ahead and rewrite this security group into a dynamic block and run the code and just see how it goes. And then in our next video, we will now start or look at modules, what we're calling Terraform modules. All right. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.